Dara Griffin. I'm a family and community engagement consultant, and I assist Kevin Brahman with all things FatherCore. So we are here to hear Sean Bryant talk about the true narrative of fatherhood. So again, thank you for being here. The true narrative of Black fatherhood is what we will be here listening to today.
That's the right title. That's the
yes, the right title, the true narrative of Black fatherhood. Before we turn it over to Sean, I just want to make a couple of announcements. Dad Discussions is next Thursday, February 24th. We will put the link to register in the chat. We will be celebrating Black history, and the true narrative of fatherhood, Black fatherhood, will be the title of that Dad Discussions as well. And the speaker will be Jody Campbell. We also have a resource fair coming up on March 18th, where everyone who will be there will be discussing the resources and supportive services specifically for fathers in Alameda County. So if you are interested in presenting a service or interested in learning about a service for fathers, please be in contact with Birbe, myself, or Kevin, and the registration link for that will be coming up in the first week of March. So without further ado, I want to turn it over to Sean, and Sean will introduce himself. Many of you have probably heard him speak before, so you know this is not a webinar. This will be interactive, it will be participatory. You will be going into breakout rooms and having conversations with each other about what he's about to present. As a presenter and a trainer myself, I also know that it is just much better energetically to be speaking to people with their cameras on instead of black boxes. So if you have any ability to have your camera on, I'm gonna invite you to turn it on as you can. So with all that being said, I will turn it over to Sean now. Thank you, Sean. Thank you everybody again for being here.
Thank you, Dara. Good morning, everyone. I see Lonnie and I see, what's up, Chris? I ain't seen you in a few years, man, since this pandemic. Diana, and I see Harold, but I don't see his face, but I know who he is. And what's up, Lamont and Dominique and Maria and Kareem and Cruz and Lisa and Wilson and Brian Woods and Tanisha. Welcome into the space. Welcome. Welcome. So Virve, I'm trying to share my screen, but it won't let me. I'm not sure what is going on.
I made you co-host. Try now.
There we go. All right. If you can just give me a thumbs up if you can see my shared screen. Thank you, Dara. Awesome. The true narrative of Black fatherhood. So what I tried to do was just present some research, but without making it very academic, in plain everyday language. And then we're going to do some group work around some stuff that we know, but we don't hear about it on the news. We don't, see it in our neighborhoods. We don't read about it in the paper. It's almost like it's a secret around the true narrative of what Black fatherhood used to be compared to what it is today. So we're just going to take a small, brisk walk into the true narrative of Black fatherhood. And some of you may be saying, so why focus on Black fatherhood? Why not focus on fatherhood in general? And why the focus on Black fatherhood? So we hope that after this, you'll be able to answer that question better. We could easily jump in and say why. There are many whys, but I think the main why is anyone who understands what anti-Blackness really is and how it's not new, it's generational and historical, can understand the narrative of Black fatherhood that's been false for decades, and how younger fathers and fathers today are changing that narrative. So we aim to spotlight that and to demonstrate it visually and in practice. All right, there we go. So for those who don't know me, I'm Sean Bryant. I'm going to be your facilitator on this learning journey. In short, just a little bit about me is on the screen, but what I do every day is I spend my time with adults who care and educate and support young children with a special focus on Black children. So that's teachers, parents, families, principals, directors, program managers, all the people who are involved in the lives of our youngest citizens. And I do that mainly through three things: through training, consulting, and coaching. So I didn't come to this work because of Gary and Kevin, but I demonstrate gratitude towards both of them for how they grabbed a hold to me years ago and kept pushing me to the front when I said, I just want to sit in the back. So I'm appreciative to Kevin, and none that Gary's an ancestor. He always, from the very beginning, and I just want to honor him, his legacy and the richness of it, kind of held my hand and pushed me to the front and said, no, you will do this. You will do this. You will do this. And even the few times that none of you know about, when I let Gary down around him giving me assignments that I literally just dropped, he didn't do what so many others have done, turn his back on me. He said, okay, we'll do better the next time. So I just have to honor him in this rich way today, in his legacy and what he left for me personally, being a colleague and a friend. So I'm appreciative of Gary, and just so much gratitude to his life and his legacy now as an ancestor. So in this virtual learning process, we're going to raise awareness about Black fatherhood. We're going to learn some ways to support Black fathers. And then you're going to discuss some new ideas around Black fathers. That's essentially how we're going to spend our time together today. So I encourage you to grab a pen and a paper, because if you're like me and you're aging, you forget things that you hear and see if you don't write them down. So it's truth, Dominique. If I don't write it, everybody that knows me knows, if I'm walking down the hall and you're saying something to me, if I don't write it down, you can guarantee it probably won't happen. Then I just created some agreements for us in our short time together. I want you to bring your knowledge and experience and your questions and your curiosities forward. You can always unmute and share that, but think about your role and responsibility, whatever your role and responsibility is. And, do you service now, or will you be servicing, or have you serviced? Do you aim to service Black fathers particularly? And what are those unique needs, from your role and responsibility? And be open to new ways of knowing and doing, so that when you get back to your work of supporting fathers in whatever way, you have some more clarity around how you can do that from your position. And of course, because this is virtual learning, we invite you to use the chat box to communicate, share ideas and thoughts that come up, but definitely keep it on topic regarding Black fathers and fatherhood. All right, so we're going to pause for just a moment. We're going to hear from some of you. And I love the fact that there's not 100 people here, because when I'm on those sessions and there are 100 people, I can't do this. I always think, well, I'm going to skip that slide. But when they're 10 and 15, then I can get to know everybody intimately, and everybody's voice can come to the front. So I'm always excited about that. So I'm just literally going to call folk that show up on my screen in the way that you're on my screen. I'm going to give everybody opportunity to unmute, talk about your place of work or your role if you want, and a question or thought you have about Black fatherhood. A question or thought you have about Black fatherhood. So Dara, I'm gonna start with you.
All right. My name is Dara. My place of work is all over California. Question, my thought about Black fatherhood is that it's totally underrated. I have a lot of thoughts. I had like an amazing dad. And so when I think about the counter narrative that's out there, it just makes me really sad. And I have an amazing husband that's an amazing dad. And so they're not acknowledged.
Thank you for that, Dara, for that thought. Lonnie, you're next, Lonnie.
Hello, everybody. My name is Lonnie. I work at a SpearNet. I'm a father engagement specialist, so I facilitate father groups that are targeted for Black fathers. And really, Dara said what I had pre-thought.
Okay.
That is, it's non-existent. But since she did say that, I would say that my thoughts are, well, how to get programs like mine out there. A lot of my fathers say they don't know that we exist. So getting promotion, getting us out there and letting them know that we do exist.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Lonnie. That's true, Lonnie. Lonnie, I used to do something similar to what you did years ago in San Francisco. And the money was really coming from the feds because they wanted dads to pay child support. But that's not how it was written. And when I quickly realized that, I was like, I don't think I want to do this. And I kind of bowed out of the job because I'm like, so y'all want me to find all the brothers that's over here in the Fillmore and then y'all gonna get them. And I'm like, that ain't who I am. So I backed out of it. But it's true. We find the fathers when we want them to be in mandated programs, but the ones that are free for them to participate in and be who they are, they're harder to find, and we wonder why. So when we think about the true narrative of Black fatherhood, I want us all to think curiously about why does that exist? Why do the programs that folk like Lonnie run get missed on all the fathers, particularly Black fathers in our communities who don't know that they exist, but the program that they do know exists is oftentimes attached to Alameda County's Sheriff's Office or Child Support Office in these other kinds of ways. We know that they exist, but not the ones that Lonnie runs. Thank you, Lonnie. Chris, you're next. You're next, Chris.
What's up, good brother, man? It's been a minute, Sean.
I know.
Yeah, last time I seen you, you was driving by 7th Street. But good morning, everybody.
Right, we always run into each other like that. He's walking somewhere and I'm driving by like, yo.
I know that's that community work, man.
Right.
You be in it, you be in it. But it's good to see everybody. Good morning, everybody. My name is Chris Norton. I'm a program manager with the Mandela Family Resource Center in West Oakland. We are located on 7th Street, right across the street from the West Oakland Bar Center. Our program is part of First Five's Neighborhood Ready for School initiatives with a focus on, obviously, families of 0 to 5 children and pregnant mothers and fathers who are expecting as well. Really just a pleasure and a joy to be in the space with all of you and share space with all of you. And I have a lot of questions and thoughts about Black fatherhood, but specifically with my program, it's almost non-existent. And I think it's okay to name right now in terms of being able to create a program. Now, our Black fathers definitely exist to the fullest, 100%. And I need to be able to learn strategies about how to engage our fathers in the most culturally responsive and effective way that really aligns with their needs, right? Because we've done a really good job in my program in the 3 years that we've been in existence in many different areas.
That's right.
Creating a space for fathers is not one of them yet. So
Correct.
this is one of my primary goals to be able to get to that. And I think I've been in space with a lot of you before. And one of the things that I need to continue to explore is because a lot of our work centers in resident services. So we provide resident services in low income and affordable housing, and many, many layers and dynamics that come with who can be in a household and who can't because of mandates, laws, perception, whether your unit is next to the property manager's unit, all of these things, right?
That's right.
So I just want to be here to thank all of y'all ahead of time for your wisdom as I learn, as I engage, and as I get better as a practitioner, because I certainly have a lot of room to get better as well. So thank you.
Appreciate that, Chris. No, Chris, that's what you just said is completely real talk. My 2 best friends and my 3 godchildren, they have moved into those new developments right at the Fruitville BART. But, it was her and the kids, but because he spent the night, who's the father, too much, close to the rent office, that's exactly what happened. They got some letters in the mail. So we just see Black men differently. We watch them differently and we police them differently. Very interesting, but I won't get into that, but you just reminded me that that's a real thing for many people. Diana, you're next.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Diana Hernandez. I'm the father engagement specialist with Starvista in San Mateo County, so
Okay.
very close to Bridge in the peninsula. And a question thought about Black motherhood is just that it's often misunderstood. And I'm interested in learning how to become an ally in this field as well, and also how to create a space that's less intimidating, that we can create community and support for Black fathers.
There you go. There you go. I'll just say this, Diana. Here's what I learned from my good brother, Resma, that if one is an ally, one should never have to be asked if there's an ally. Your action should dictate that you're an ally. So think about that. Think about that. That allyship just is something in and of itself that we demonstrate and act on. And no one should have to ask us, or we shouldn't have to name, I'm an ally. That's usually an indication something else is going on. So as you strive for allyship, think of it as action. Lamont, or is that Kat? You're next, Lamont. Which one you prefer?
Kat, I appreciate that, Sean. Thank you. Kat Thompson, I work for Alameda County Center for Healthy Schools. I'm a community outreach worker. I've been involved with the Fatherhood Initiative, Fatherhood Boot Camp, and Fatherhood Core in and out for like the last 6 years since my sons were born. And what I feel like is most important, or what I like to say about Black fatherhood is, one, I really do feel someone, I think it was you who said it, Sean, that programs that are centered around helping fathers be better fathers, not just for themselves, but for their families. It's almost like a secret society that you have to know somebody that's a part of it. And I think that a lot of our issues that go on in our community can be solved with getting behind and supporting our Black fathers to be better fathers. So this is really important. And helping fathers to be able to navigate some of these services that are really complex and intimidating in order to give them what they need to, again, be better fathers.
There you go. Appreciate that, Cap. Dominique, you're next.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dominique Wilson. I'm the Parent Engagement Administrator for First Five, Alameda County. Question and thought about Black fatherhood. Many. I did not grow up with my father. My father was not involved. And I think that I had a very negative relationship towards him throughout my childhood. And I think it wasn't until I was a young adult, maybe in my 20s, that I really understood his absence could have possibly been what was best for me because of maybe what he was involved with in his life. And that when you think about, when I think about fatherhood, I have to also think about what comes with being a Black man in this society and how that impacts relationship. And that perhaps the best thing he could have done was to stay away. And so how that altered my feeling toward him, right? And so when I take that back into the work that I do, I often think about how our perception of something really impacts how we move through it and towards it. And so wanting to really understand and learn more about the experiences of Black fathers so that I know what position and role I can play in supporting the work.
Thank you for that, Dominique. And thank you for bringing up that notion of possibly the best thing for you. Because that is part of the narrative, the old narrative about fathers. But we really know that it's only between like 6 to 13% of Black fathers. And Kevin's heard me say this before. The research hasn't shifted in probably a decade that should not be with their young children or their children, their adolescents. 6 to 13%. That's a really small number compared to the narrative that we see and hear about in the media. So that's the minority, not the majority. Thank you for reminding us of that, Dominique. Maria, you're next.
Hi, everyone. Hi again, Brian. Thank you guys for allowing me to be here today. My name is Maria Perez. I am one of the parent partners here at Newark Unified School District. And a question and a thought, and what I want to say, what Dominique had said, resonates with something, my own experience growing up. And I know that we take in our work our own experiences, but what a lot of people aren't able to do is empathize with knowing that people think differently based on their experiences in life, and that everyone has had a different experience than the one that you grew up with. And taking that into a factor, a question I have, I have here would be, it would be kind of for all fathers too, but also for Black fathers, is just what do you do to become the best dad that you can be for your family? Because what you do is different than maybe what you experienced growing up. And so asking a parent what they do is showing in a way, like asking you how you've overcome, how your journey has brought you here to be the best parent that you can be. And I just think that question would lead to many different scenarios and conversations. That's a question that I have.
Great. And Maria, I'm gonna reframe what you just said, because in another way, when we ask that question, we call those types of questions being asset informed, which is really different than strength-based. Most of us learned about strength-based approaches, but this notion of asset informed, which is really around how we engage Black mothers and Black fathers by asking them to identify, just like you said, what do you do? And then we immediately understand that when they start talking about it, those are the assets, that we all have them inside of us. And that is those who are charged with supporting us to get those out, not strengths, but assets, fundamental assets that are usually passed down throughout our families and our communities, and they show up differently than our strengths do, because usually our strengths are really measured against what the dominant structure. So this notion of asking that type of question gets us towards being asset informed. So I like it. Cruz, you're next.
How you doing, everyone? My name is Hector Cruz. I'm with Tribe Oakland. We're based out of San Antonio Park in the San Antonio district. I'm the lead ambassador for Tribe at the park and our district. I'm on here basically, I've been part of a Black father group. I mean, it wasn't called that, but it was primarily Black. I was basically the only Mexican. I've been raised around, my Black folks all my life. So work around them, majority of my friends are Black. And so we want to just kind of, like Chris said, we want to open that space, for the San Antonio district and community, and, just kind of reach out and to the fathers in our area, and, anywhere else for that matter, but just trying to, open up that space for Black, for fathers in general, but, just trying to be able to learn and relate and, just see how different cultures as far as fathers goes, basically works. So, I'm here to learn and, just suck up as much game and information that I could use and basically bring back to my community.
There you go. Appreciate you, Hector. Lisa, you're next.
Morning, I'm Lisa Taylor from the City of Oakland Head Start program. So we do birth to 5. So we have a prenatal too, just like a couple of these other programs. And my thought is that we don't acknowledge our Black dads enough. And we have staff that need to be re-educated. So there's 99% of women, and they might not just be all women of color. There are some Black women or African-American women who are scared of our Black brother. I had a great dad. So we need to acknowledge our fathers, take them in, listen to them, connect with them, engage, give them a second chance, have empathy for these dads. I mean, all dads need empathy, but especially Black fathers, knowing what they go through. Stop calling the cops. Just try to listen first. How you engaging with them? Don't assume that all dads are deadbeat and everybody has a bad day. So it's okay. Some dads go off. as women, we go off too. So I don't know, but educate some of our teachers needs to be happen, because at too many of our sites, they get scared or intimidated, and not all of them, but just there's been some concerns and issues. So we just need to re-educate these teachers, because I'm tired of them saying about these Black men at our sites. But I want to thank Kevin, and he hooked me up with a couple other people to be mentors for some of these dads, because they're going through, they have to understand too, like everybody else, rent. I'm not making excuses. Sometimes if you out of pocket and you went off on somebody, you out of pocket, and there's consequences to your actions. I get that, but also giving them a second chance. Stop, I don't know. I'm gonna be quiet, because I had a great experience with my dad. I loved my dad, and he was always there, and it makes a big difference having a father there. So
Thank you, Lisa. Lisa, I love it when I feel like the universe always brings these things together. You, just like two other people brought up something, I literally just got 3 messages from, not at your Head Start, but another Head Start program in the Bay Area, where what you just said literally happened. It literally happened yesterday and today. A little kid, they had to call CPS because the 2-year-old, someone stuck their nails into the baby. So they said, an adult did this. The mom came and was explaining. A teacher looks out the window and says, there are 3 Black men outside. They're coming in here to get us. And she runs through the preschool yelling at Black woman with a Black child who had a Black daddy. So this narrative that you talk about is real. We're going to talk about the other side of that today though, but talking about the other side and acting on that can help us mitigate that very thing that you talk about, that it's sometimes Black women that have this false narrative of Black fathers and Black men who were really, guess what they were doing, Lisa? Dropping their own dang kids off. That's all they were doing. But because they were what? Black, the Black teacher said, they're coming in here to jump on us because we call CPS. It's real. It's real. Thank you, Lisa. All right. It's Otis. You're next, Otis. Happy New Year. I haven't seen you in a moment.
How you doing, Dr. Bryant? It's always a pleasure, my brother, to be in the midst of the knowledge that you share. I'm here to just to learn. No questions, because I am Black fatherhood. Thoughts, I have plenty, but I'm just here because I'm a part of the movement, and the movement is to get the shackles and the handcuffs off our Black fathers, so that they can really be who they are. The systems that are in place, we know down through the years, myself, we have found that many are being removed. I just want to share a story. My brother, Chris Gibson, the First 5 Fatherhood collaborative that we have is awesome. My son actually got 50% custody of his daughter. He's a great dad. And, him and his mother, they was having their challenges, and she was, using, the child is always in the middle. I'm not going to say whose fault, but just for me to reverse and go back to the 80s, when I was in child support, I didn't have no one on my side. It was the DA, it was child support, it was the court system, it was other systems that all were against me, and I was in there all by myself. I'm thankful today we haven't got to where we need to be, but because of Kevin and Gary and many others, our county supervisors, our court systems, those that are in high places, decision makers that are now tearing down a lot of the barriers that was there when I came up. So I'm just here to learn more so I can share with the community. Thank you all for listening. And I'm just happy to be a part of such a great movement of the liberation of Black fathers throughout America.
All right. Appreciate you bringing your voice to the forefront. Kareem, you're next. That's a hard one to follow, Kareem.
Man, I'll try my best, my brother Sean. I'll try my best.
Right.
It's good to be here, man. Good day to everybody. My name is Kareem Chadley. I'm the executive director of and founder of Dad's Evoking Change. Dad's Evoking Change is here to help, as Otis was talking about, young Black fathers navigate the child custody and the child support system, because we know a lot of times, Brother Otis mentioned, we do get marginalized in that system. There's a lot of gray areas and hurdles that may be out there that, you know, not everybody on the front end can see. So that's what we do over at Dad's Evoking Change. I think, like Otis, you know, Black fatherhood is embodied in me, you know what I mean? But I would say my thought about Black fatherhood is that we are the catalyst for change in our communities. No other person is more probably responsible for the way that our communities can turn out and the ability to create thriving young individuals that come through our communities. And so I just want to hold the space for all the Black fathers out there and all the brothers and sisters that do this work surrounding Black fatherhood, because if there was anybody that can really make a change in our communities and an impact in our communities, it's the Black fathers. So we have to create programming, we have to create resources for our Black fathers so that we can move through some of these negative stereotypes and some of these hurdles and gray areas, I'll call them, that have been placed out there into society for years, right? We are the people that can start to help create this change. Black fathers and people that are working for and with Black fathers. So that's my thought about Black fatherhood.
All right, thank you, Kareem. I think there was a little delay there. I'm not sure if it was my end or who's in, but I could see your mouth stopped moving, but I still heard your voice. I was waiting.
Yeah, I was done. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we heard you. We heard you.
It's just a little delayed. Yeah.
All right, thank you for that. Tanisha, you're next. Tanisha Jackson. She might not be able to unmute. Lori Walsh. Wilson.
Good morning. This is Lori Walsh. I'm sorry I couldn't unmute. I'm here to listen and learn. I'm excited to be here and soak it all in.
All right, thank you, Lori. Brian Woods.
Hi, I'm Brian Woods. I'm a client services counselor with Bananas. I'm here to learn. There's a very unique experience that is Black fatherhood that, I don't experience. So that's what I want to learn about. See if there's anything that can learn more about barriers, and just making them Black fathers more comfortable about coming into our agency. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Awesome, thank you. So Harold stepped away. Harold, if you're back, you can unmute, but if he sent a message saying that he stepped away, so I'm not sure if he's back or not. So we'll just move forward. Thank you all. Kevin, unless you had something you wanted to share.
Not really. I think we just, the reason we named this training and invited Sean to lead it is to, highlight the true narrative of Black fatherhood. I think, there's that 6 to 13% that Sean mentioned that gets the majority of airtime and airplay and media attention. And then there's that other 85 to 90% or 94% that don't get the attention and the light isn't shined on what it is that they're doing. And I just want to, what we're here to do is support fathers with being the fathers that they want to be. It's not, helping them to become anything. It's we want to help them be all that they want to be. And that's what the Fathers Corps is about. And that's what, this training is feeding into that. So Sean, thanks for being here. Sorry, I had to step away for a minute. And I'm looking forward to your presentation today, Sean.
Appreciate you, Kevin. So it looks like Harold's back. Harold, the floor is all yours, and then we'll move forward. I thought he was back, and then he unmuted himself. All right. No worries. We'll move forward. So thank you all for that. It gives me context as a facilitator and to know what each person has come seeking in terms of being here. So let's jump right in. So we're going to start with around, I think I only put 7 in the slides, but there's some processes that we found out that kind of honor Black fatherhood. And what I really did was I distilled the research in like a palatable way to make it relatable. But this all comes from research that centers specifically Black fathers and Black dads. So the first thing that Black dad said was, I love being the dad. And I really know that I'm doing a good job and I want to do better. Think about that, that I love being a dad. And when nobody else tells me, I know that I'm doing a good job, but I want to do better. So for us as service providers, when that dad says, I want to do better, how do we support that as a true narrative of Black fatherhood? How does our programs pivot and shift regardless of the deliverables? I can't wait for us to do away with deliverables because they're so antiquated and they miss the real work of what fathers and dads are seeking when they show up to our agencies. So our question is, how do I help dads who've already identified that they want to do more? How do I support them in doing better based on their needs, their vision, not mine? The second one, dads were basically saying, look, I'm not a babysitter. I do nothing like a babysitter. I'm a father. I want to get credit for that, and I deserve support. How do we support that narrative? How do we hear that narrative in a way that says, yeah, this is an asset-informed approach? How do we do that? How do we do that opposed to the old narrative of he has his kids, so he's watching them right now? How do we move away from that narrative to get to the true narrative of fatherhood? Many millennial Black dads are saying, look, I love my parents, like many folk on the call just said, but I'm actually doing Black fatherhood differently. That I actually enjoy being with my child or my children. I enjoy loving them. I enjoy being present. I enjoy being playful. And that's the kind of parent that I want to be. So how do we support that? Here's the other thing that the research specifically aimed at Black fathers talks about, that the main support for Black fathers, who can guess what the main support for Black fathers is? Take a guess, anybody, unmute and put it in the chat box. There's a main support that most Black fathers said their support system comes from. Who is it, Dara? I see you mouthing something.
I'll say their wife.
Oh, it's not their wife. Maria said themselves.
Is it their mothers?
There you go. I knew Dara had it. It's their mamas, their Black mamas. Through hook or crook, their Black mamas are their main support and resource. This is what Black millennial dads are saying. That is their mothers. Their mothers are the main resource. So we're talking about grandmoms here. We're talking about grandmoms. So how many of our programs actually communicate, if we have any type of fatherhood initiative or fatherhood program, how many of them have a pathway towards grandmoms? Something to rethink. Not towards moms the way we've been doing for the last 15 years, but towards their own mother, not their partner, not their baby's mama, not their wife, but their mother. They named as the #1 resource for the influence on them being a dad and a father. That's something to rethink. That's something to rethink about our existing structures that oftentimes never, when I read it, I was like, whoa. And the article is literally on Black dads. And then I read the next page and it was like, whoa, they're talking about the grandmothers again, particularly dads who were fluctuating, meaning they were trying to do better, like that other dad said. Their resource was their mother if they had one. Another thing that honors Black dads was this notion of, Lisa says, strong Black women are resilient. That's right, Lisa. That if what we don't see, we don't believe. I'll say it again. Otis said something similar to this. What we don't see, we don't believe. So Black dads are saying, Just because you might not see me or that I'm not engaging or involving in the way you want me to, don't assume that I'm not engaged and involved. Don't assume that. So how do we respond to this through an asset-informed lens? How do we respond to this through an asset-informed lens? I'll tell you how. More research on dads. Kevin's heard me say this before. It's the what? Quality of time spent with my father, not the quantity. It's the quality. So Otis just said his son's got 50% custody. So that means those 3.5 days, if they're doing it, unless they're doing 3 and 4, you know, the way my brother did, when they're with their dads, even if they're only seeing them on Saturday and Sunday, the quality of those interactions have a much greater sustaining effect than me living with my dad and him not saying too much or doing too much with me. I see him every day, so we call it being physically present, but emotionally absent. What we find is the fathers who actually see their children and engage, it has the sustaining effect much greater than children who are with their dads every single day. So we've got to understand that and know that those fathers who say, I only have partial custody or I see my kids 2 days out of the week, it's not this is better than nothing, but it's what do you want to do when you're with your kids? That's that asset-informed question, not what do you do when you're with your kids? Those are really two different. I'm gonna say it again. It's not what do you do when you're with your kids, which assumes you're not doing much. That's a test question. The better question as asset-informed is what do you want to do when you're with your kids? They're really different and they resonate different with dads. And I won't get too much into that because it's the corny brain science that Kevin likes me to talk about, but other people get bored with it. All right, Kevin's laughing. That means tell you about it. So basically, when we say those two things to fathers, their brains hear something different. The one that says, what do you do with your children? This thing in our brain called the task positive network, it goes off and it closes us down because my brain says, Otis is testing me. He wants to see if I'm a good dad or not. But when Otis says, Sean, what do you want to do when you're with your kids? My brain says, this isn't a test. He wants you to just talk. It's important to Otis to hear what you have to say. And then my brain opens up to what new ways, because I don't see Otis as a threat or as a challenge. Really different, seems simple, but that simple nuance either makes me lean in or tells me to be on guard. What do you do when you're with your kids? Test question, you're gonna close me down. What would you like to do when you're with your kids? You open me up to capacity. Real talk, real talk. So Black fathers in particular said, I want to share real parenting experiences, real problems and real solutions with other Black dads. With other Black dads. Yep, this is real. So years ago, I did a parent group at West Grand Head Start, which is a part of where Lisa works. And the dads who were all there, the first group, we had about 6 dads who came. And then they all said, instead of us just sitting over here in the side room talking, this has been great. We actually want to go into the rooms where our children are and play with them together with each other. So what they were really saying was, I want to see what he does because I want to learn from him. I want to see what he does. I want to learn from him. Let's all go do this together and resource as Black dads. This is what dads are saying. But do our programs open up to this type of thing? Or are we having teachers who see 3 men standing outside and say they're coming in here to get us? Like, that's those realities. The true narrative of Black fatherhood is dads are saying, I want my real experiences to be shared with other Black dads, but our programs oftentimes don't make a way or an opportunity for that to happen. We got some work to do. I'm almost there in these processes. I think I only put 7 here. Millennial dads are saying, I need my kids to respect me and not be afraid of me. I'll say it again. They're saying, I need my kids to respect me and not be afraid of me. This is huge. This is huge from how I was reared. Remember, Kevin? Oh, you better be afraid of me, Negro, or it's going to be something else that happens. That narrative is really flipping for Black dads. They're like, I don't want my kids to ever be afraid of me. I want them to respect me. That's different. That is different. That says, I aim to parent differently. I aim to parent differently. I aim to be present. I aim to do it differently. Here's the big piece though, that's behind this. That's our work in our supportive programs. When the dad says, I want my kids to respect me, not fear me, they're saying, I want to do this differently, but I don't have a lot of tools in my toolbox. And that's when they come to places like Otis's program, and they won't ever say it that way. They don't ever say, I want my kids to respect me, not be scared of me, but I don't know what else to do other than not raise my voice. See what I'm saying? So they're seeking that piece of what are the other things that I need to do so that they respect me? And that's how we can show up with those types of supportive responses. This is what they're asking for. This is what they're asking for. Then the last one, millennial dads is basically Black dads were saying, my kids watch every daggone thing I do. That makes me happy and it scares me a little bit. My kids are watching everything I do. That makes me happy and it scares me. As service providers, how do we respond to this? So Chris said, we've been here 3 years and we pretty much ain't done nothing with Black fathers and we want to do something. This could be an entry point. These are all entry points for us to redesign our programs for Black dads. Questions, thoughts, feelings, reactions, responses before we move forward?
Yeah, Sean,
Dara, then Kevin.
Sorry, Sean, couple of slides back, you said that the need for Black fathers to have a Black space with fathers.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of places will push back on and say things like, well, why does it have to just be Black fathers? Can you please say more about that?
Well, what Black fathers are really saying is, even if I show up for a fatherhood program or fatherhood services, it's usually a few things. It's framed negatively. I'm here based on something negative, child support, those types of things. The second thing, my voice and my experience is never centered. So because my voice and my experience is never centered. And if we look at who people think Alameda County, or specifically Oakland, is in the vast Alameda County, according to the census, and we can look at that with one eye open always. Black people as a population in Alameda County are shrinking. So if we know we're shrinking as a race of people, so then that means our voice gets what? Left out of the equation. We call that historically anti-Blackness, Dara. You know this. So because it's a real thing and it exists, then what we have to do is find real practical ways that honor our citizens who are saying, Black fathers, who I'm talking about specifically, I don't see myself reflected back when I show up for this fatherhood program. This fatherhood program isn't meaningful to me because they're trying to teach me something which says I'm not enough and I don't show up with any assets. So I came to one or two and then I don't come back. And that's largely how all of our programs are structured. And these younger fathers are saying this doesn't meet my need. So this notion of I want to be around other people who talk like me and look like me and who understand all the modes of communication that I might use, verbal, paraverbal, and nonverbal. And I don't have to always explain being a Black father. That's what they're really saying, that I want the space to be me. And where's that space? I'm always seeking for that space. And I think this, we're talking about Black fathers, but I think other fathers, I think mothers, other communities have it. And when they have it, nobody calls it out. But when we ask for it, it gets called out differently, which is that perpetual kind of anti-Blackness stance that shows up. I like to say it creeps in through the back door, and then it only makes us go silent. So our response is, how do we move away from the silence when folks say, Black dads say, I want a space for Black dads? My response is, why the hell don't it already exist? That's my response to those people who are saying, why Black dads? My response is, why doesn't it exist? Why doesn't it exist? Kevin, you unmuted yourself?
Yeah, I just want to appreciate the point that you made around the dads not having the tools and acknowledging that they don't have the tools needed to have their children not quote unquote fear them. And I think a lot of that corporal punishment, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, Dara, during Chris's training, is rooted in fear for their child. Like even the negative stuff that dads are doing to try to keep their kids on the right track is rooted in a good place. And how do we as providers support them with moving beyond that is one thing. But a lot of it is, these streets are unforgiving, so if I got to spank your butt while you're in this house, then dads feel like, and parents in general, that's not just dads, feel like it's safer for me to do it here to make sure that you're not out there in these streets acting a fool than it is for me to let the street spank you, because the street spank is a little rougher and tougher and lasts a little longer than what mine may do. So even that, there's a positive lens that you can look and see that through. And then support the dad in making whatever journey he needs to make to move away from that. But I just appreciate you pointing that out.
Yeah. So I just want to add to that, Kevin, and then we can move forward. So I want to make the distinction around this notion of a spanking, or in community, it might be called a whooping, around how that being one small element, but this notion of fear, what they were really talking about was their experience of this man that lived in the house with me, and I'm using that word on purpose. This man that lived in the house with me, I was scared as hell of him. I was scared of his rapid mood changes. I was scared of his sometimes, drug habit. I was scared that he would disappear for 2 days and then he would come back. Like, it's a different level. They're talking about fear in a different way. Not, oh, you might spank me because I did something. Now, we can all feel how we want to feel about spanking. That's not what this one is really about. I think you brought up something that's really provocative though, Kevin, because across that continuum, some people may say that spanking is the entry point. But when we dug deeper, they were really talking about those 6 to 8, 13%. They were talking about those people that I don't want to be fearful the way those 6 to 13% of dads who shouldn't be in the home show up. Like the unpredictable dad who has the mood swings that I don't know if he's going to smile at me today or I might get a back slap. I just don't know. Living in that state of fear and what it does, they're saying, I want to be nothing like that. So thank you for bringing that up so that I could clarify. That's what they were talking about.
Gotcha.
Lisa, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I was just going to say also it could be fear of disappointment. Like they don't want to, like, I guess when they grow up, because I don't know, I kind of saw it in my sons with their dad, with my ex-husband, a fear of disappointing him where he gets so angry, or I don't know. And I guess also a different culture. Africans have their own way. I don't want to say that, but they do. So getting upset, maybe it could be the drunkenness, it could be the name calling, but just the disappointment that you see in your son. So, but as a father, they shouldn't have to have that fear of the unexpected, but growing up as a Black young man. So I don't know. And I think that affects them too at some point. But I might be getting off topic. Let me stop. Okay, so let me. Yeah, but anyway, so what I was gonna say, yeah, that I was just trying to comment, but I think I went off topic. That's easy for me. But okay.
Can I say I'm glad.
Lonnie, Otis had his hand up. Then you, Lonnie.
Okay.
Otis.
Yeah, I just think about the attributes of slavery and how that process, I mean, when I came up, you look at how can a slave who was treated worse than an animal turn around and teach another man or a boy how, or treat him him as a son, and that mentality, it just continued to go down through the years, from one generation to the next, and through training, through classes. I mean, we started to see some caught on. Hey, this is not the way I'm supposed to treat my son. But that stigma was still upon us. This is how you treat. This is the way I was treated. So this is how I was able to. This is how they kept me in line. So I'm going to do the same thing to those that I love, not really knowing this is creating a fear of not a fear of love, not a fear of respect, but a fear of, you know, this man is not on my side, and it's really been devastating. You know, for many, you know, I mean, decades, hundreds, you know, ever since the slavery, it's been really devastating upon us, and we have to. I hear a lot of people say, no, slavery doesn't have anything to do with it. I beg the difference. I beg the difference because I see the same patterns even today with some, until you learn to do better, fathers with that same type of mentality.
Yeah, thank you for that, Otis. I stand in solidarity with you, but I left that part out because that would have been a whole nother training in and of itself. And Kev only gave me a short amount of time because he tells me I asked him to pay me too much when I speak. So he gives me just a little bit of time. So Lonnie and then Cap raised his hand. Thank you, Otis, though. But that's true that enslaved piece, I'll just add this part, Otis. What we know is part of that generational trauma is the relationships that we had and didn't have with our fathers emanated from, as enslaved human beings. My father might disappear tomorrow if he was sold off, which is really what the naming piece came from, which is why there was Otis Jr., Otis III, because Otis Sr. got sold away. We may never see him again. So we named his son Otis in memory. That's a very African trait. But this isn't about that Africans displaced in America, but you just reminded me of that, Otis. And that's a whole nother thing that we can unpack, you know, with Kevin in the Father's Core if we want to later. Lonnie, then Cap.
Yeah, I'm glad you explained that fear because I was kind of on the same line as Kevin was, but because I always had I'll say a healthy fear of my dad. I wasn't fearful of my dad, but I had a healthy fear of my dad, and it was I didn't want to get in trouble at school, and my teacher called my dad because I'll get in trouble. That type of fear, and then as I got older, I didn't want to disappoint my dad because even still today, I still had that what will my dad think type of fear. I don't want to disappoint him type, which I think it stems back because like Lisa, my dad's been with me my whole life. He's a great dad. I love him. He's my hero. You know, he's my hero. And that's the father figure. You know, that's the figure that's been in my life because he's always been there. My parents are still together,
right?
So I've always had him, and I've always looked to him as my role model. So I have a fear of not wanting to disappoint my dad, you know, by doing something that would embarrass the Blanson name or something, you know, on that type of ground. So I'm glad you explained the fear thing because I was thinking how Kevin was thinking.
Awesome, thank you, appreciate that. Kat?
Just real quick, I appreciate this conversation because I got twin 6-year-olds, and both of them are boys, and I think that my father was incarcerated until I was 15, so I didn't grow up. My mom played that role. My grandmother played that role, and I think that that's one of the things that I've always kept in mind is I do want the respect of my sons, but I don't want them to fear me. You know what I mean? And it was one incident where I was upset with my son, and I reached for him to talk to him, and he flinched from it, and it kind of messed me up because that's not. I don't want that type of fear. And I think, just to be honest, I think in our culture, a lot of at least I know my mom and my parents and my family kind of prided themselves on that. Like, you know what I'm saying? And I think that there's a lot of negative, it creates a negative thing, you know what I mean? And so with my kids, I try different ways of dealing with that. And so I just wanted to say, I think that piece is really helpful. So I appreciate that.
No, thank you for bringing your voice to the space, for sure, for sure. Awesome. I'm gonna go to these 4 slides and then we're gonna get to one and then you all are gonna talk and we're gonna see something. So Black fathers and their children, we actually have evidence that Black fathers, their warmth and involvement actually helps their child or children in all areas, socially, emotionally, academically, in school, with self-regulation and self-esteem. So across all domains of learning, when Black fathers show up in this caring way, it affects their child or children. That's what we're finding out. We actually know that early Black father involvement actually is sustaining. It's sustaining, meaning the earlier that I'm engaged with my child or children, it sustains me and it sustains them because I want to do it more. It has a ripple effect. It has a ripple effect. And that ripple effect really has an effect on home and school. The more I'm engaged with my child at home, that translates to what? Later involvement. I'm going to come and be the one that talks to my child's teacher. You know, his mom might come, but I'm going to show up. This is the correlation between early involvement and engagement and later involvement and engagement. So the last slide in this piece, there's some new social norms around Black fathers and parenting. And that norm is dad's okay with being fully responsible for their child. They're okay with learning how to change the diaper, learning how to feed the child, learning how to be social, that they're more involved than ever before. This is reality, but we never hear about it. We hear about that 6 to 13%. But here's why. So this is my one slide. This slide is for where you were taking us, Otis, but I couldn't devote that much time to it. So this slide looks at 1880 to 2009. The purple line is mothers only. The red line is no parent. The green line is fathers only. What year do you see a significant shift in mothers only increasing? Who can see that? Kevin said
The civil rights.
That's right. It's right around 1960. It happened around the 50s, but around 1960, it increased. So let me tell you what this slide represents. This slide represents welfare. Telling Black mothers and Black fathers who were denied employment, who were married at times, that if he's not part of the household, we'll help you. But if he's a part of the household, we won't help you. This is how the system worked. This wasn't some welfare queen, those false narratives. This wasn't some dad who was just, slinging it all around town and had babies in every zip code. This was the system saying, Otis, Kevin, Harold, Kareem, Lonnie, Cap, Sean, you can't be a part of this household or your family might starve. It was systemic. It was systemic. And this is the fractured narrative of Black fathers. It is. This can't be unchanged. It's the truth. It is the truth. And it's our most current truth that has residual effects today. So I just wanted to share this slide to put it in context of where we're going next with the new Black fatherhood narrative, because this is the one that our parents and grandparents held on to, the one that the media constantly flashed in front of us, and it's inaccurate and it was systemic. It was intentionally made up. Because that's why, if you look, it was under 10% of mothers who lived in mother-only households until the 1960s. You're paying attention to that number on the left side, right, Dara? It was under 10%. So the line that they didn't put here that they're not representing is parents raising their children together. That line isn't even here. Because the effect of this one is the mother only one, the purple line goes up so high because of welfare. And what they told people, if you got welfare, this is what will happen. But, Black fathers said, it's my moms who are always looking out for me. A lot of the new research that centers Black dads, guess who's doing the research? Because all fatherhood research used to be done by white males. I'm not saying they're all bad, but it was all deficit based. It would only say, here's what Black fathers aren't doing. It would talk about that 6 to 13%. a lot of the new research is being done by Black women or women of color on fathers specifically. And we have an emerging, and I'm saying emerging means three Black men who have their PhDs who are doing work on Black fathers specifically. And I'm happy about that. And I'm tracking them like they stole something from me. Every time they put something out, I need it because they're reorienting the narrative around this true narrative. All right, so the next two slides really show you, this slide is children under the age of 5. So I want you to pay attention to these colors. So the top light gray is Latino fathers, the dark gray is white fathers, and then the brown color is Black fathers, right? So I know Chris is on the call, so Chris would say, well, where are the Asian dads? Where are the Asian dads? That's always where he reminds me, like, where are the Asian dads? They didn't put them in this research, Chris, so we're gonna have to reach out to them. But I want you to pay attention to what's happening here, because most of you have never, ever experienced this before around what we're saying, what the research says around, this ain't made up, this is the research around Black fathers. For children under age 5, Black fathers ate with their children more than everybody else. So this notion of mealtime, that's meal times, that first one, 78% of Black dads were home for breakfast, lunch, or dinner and did it with their child or children. Under that, 70% of dads gave their child a bath, dressed them, or diapered them, outweighing all other dads. 82% of Black dads play with their children daily. That's huge. Is that the narrative you hear? It's not the one that I hear. Now check this one out. 35% of dads, because 34.9, that's 35 in my mind, read to their child daily. Now, when do you hear a Black man's doing something better than a white man? They got 5 percentage points on white men there in reading to their children daily. And what about even the first one, 22% of Latino dads read to their children daily. That's stuff we never hear about. We never hear about this. So here we have Black dads, leading the charge when compared to white dads and Latino dads. I'm gonna stop for a moment there. I'm ignoring the column to the right where it says fathers not living with their children. We're ignoring that for now. We're ignoring that for now because that's just more data. But when you hear this and you see this visually, what comes up for you? What comes up for you? Harold, go ahead. Welcome, Harold. All right, Harold put himself on screen.
What comes up for me is that it is designed by the United States of America.
All right.
It has been here since we have been brought over to this land. Black fathers are not giving any credit from the United States of America. That's why, in my opinion, we have so many institutionalized agencies and entities that are moving and have been moving since we've been brought over here to keep us suppressed, for the lack of a better word, suppressed. And it is more than heart-wrenching. It is generational, from generation to generation to generation. And in part, that's why we are here today. You know, when you can look at the efforts by the current Senate, from voting rights and a whole list of things, for whatever it may be worth, and I know sometimes it's not well or safe to voice one's own opinion in these kind of settings, and I don't think this is not one of them, but in other settings, it is designed to keep the white population in power. According to the census, I believe, by 2030, white population is going to become the minority. And from the Senate, they're saying, how can we stay in power? How can we stay in power? It's what they call Trump, make America great again. So to a certain degree, it's a little difficult to stay hopeful and optimistic, but I encourage us to continue the fight.
Thank you, Harold. Kareem, then Otis, then Dominique. We can't hear you, Kareem.
My bad. I was still on mute. I was so excited to talk. Yeah, no. For me, this brings up going back to your slides, man. The slides were really great because when you see data like that and it's in your face and there's no, you can't really, men lie, women lie, numbers don't, right? So you can't argue with the data. What it brings to me is the connection again to slavery, right? If we have a system right now that will reward and really, if you are a single mom or a mom that maybe wasn't married, or even if you're a mom that's married, right? Your best option may be to not be with your partner so that you can collect this check, right? So they're rewarding the splitting up of families, the same thing they were doing in slavery. In slavery, they took the father, and they sold him to a plantation way on the other side. So that he was completely out of the picture. Now they'll give the woman a check and put the father way on the other side. And what this does is trickle down to our communities. Again, what I brought up in the beginning, and which one of your slides said, we know that our involvement helps in all these different aspects. If you want to talk about suicide, ending up in prison, drug use, the ability to do well in school, the numbers are there. So it feels, again, as Brother Harold said, this is systematically in place. It's systematically in place, right? And the trickle down is that so the next generation will fall in suit and be a part of the same system and be victims of the same system. And so when you see numbers like that, it really puts things into perspectives, right? You can make a lot of connections. But one is, I think the most important thing is why our work is so vital in making sure that this generation of fathers can start to break that cycle and demystify some of those stereotypes that have been going on since the 60s and 70s. So that's what it brought up for me.
Appreciate that, Kareem. Otis, then Dominique.
I just wanted to quote Brother Malcolm X said, the media, the most powerful entity on earth. They have the power to make the innocent guilty and to make the guilty innocent. And that's power because they control the minds of the masses. So what I try to do is when I get information like this, post it on my social media platforms, because the only way that we're going to be able to make change is we have to get the word out. And the things we see on TV, the things we see on social media platforms, many times there's subliminal messaging to try to keep us in a certain place so that we can't move forward. So I actually challenge each one of you, when you have the ability to sit and listen to individuals like Dr. Bryant and get this type of information, post it on your social media platforms. I'm tired of looking at people twerking. I'm tired of looking at, I want to see something that's going to help my community. So I challenge each one of you, and if you talk to somebody else, challenge them, create your social media platforms so that they are large and they reach out to the masses so that we can change the minds of our people and let them know that who they really are through the information that we get from individuals like Dr. Bryant and others that's out there on the forefront.
Thank you, Otis. Dominique. So Verve will be emailing a slide deck, a PDF of it, but I just put it in the chat also for those who wanted it. So you'll get it in 2 ways. Dominique?
Thank you. And just highlighting what Kareem had mentioned around single mothers. I think even today we praise single motherhood, right? And growing up with a single mom, I just remember everyone in my family and in our social circle praising her for what a great job she was doing by herself. And I had a conversation with my mom when I got older, like that wouldn't be a decision for me to do this alone because you worked really hard. And so while not taking away from all that goes into raising a child by yourself. I think there's a lot to be said about how as a society, we place value on Black women doing it alone, and how we need to move away from that. And then also, I will say in full disclosure, trusting that this is a safe and confidential space, as one of the 6 to 13%, Sean? As someone who had that experience, who lived that experience, I did not see firsthand what Black fatherhood looked like, raised by a single mother. And so the narrative that's perpetuated in society fit my experience, right? It fit my experience. Right. And so these conversations and these forums are critical and really, really significant, because it allows, like I spoke to earlier, the perspective. It allows you to see and understand things differently, because you don't know what you don't know. And as I co-parent, I talk to Kevin sometimes about my challenges with co-parenting. And when I sit and I listen to Black fathers talk about their experiences, it allows me to fall back and to let my children's father parent the way he sees fit to parent. That my way isn't the right way because it's the way my mama did it and the way her mama did it. And so I think that creating these spaces for folks to listen and to learn about the beauty of Black fatherhood allows that 6 to 13% to see, hey, this may have been my experience, but this is not the experience, right? This is not the story. Right. And then it allows me to approach the work. It allows me to engage differently, and it allows me to receive differently. And so I really value and appreciate these spaces, because I learn about my work, but I also learn about myself and how I engage and how I pour into my children by understanding and respecting how their father decides how he wants to be a dad, and give him the space to do that by falling back. So I appreciate everybody's input, and I appreciate the conversation. And I think it's critical to this work that we hear it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I heard you say something that I just want to spotlight, and then Kareem, and then we're gonna move forward around this notion of taking a step back. I think it's not just powerful, but that reflective capacity of you saying, you know what, this ain't about me. This is about him and his children. They are our children. In the resources that it takes to say, I'm gonna step back and just let him be a father. That's so crucial and so needed and necessary.
And hard, but necessary, right? It's hard for me to do that, because I feel like my way is the right way. But I understand, and I learned from these forums, I've learned that my way isn't the right way.
Yeah, but
it's my way. My way is simply my way, not the right way, right?
But when you model that, there are people watching and listening on the periphery, and that's some of the most powerful learning. You know, the people around you, the other women who watch and hear, they're learning from that so that they can then go do it too. Because when we don't do that, the other message that we send to Black men as fathers is, you don't know what the hell you're doing, so I got to parent you the way I'm parenting them. And that's dangerous. That's dangerous. And we've picked up on that generationally, that we think we're supposed to do it. When I'm saying I'm thinking Black women. They think, oh, he doesn't know, so I got to treat him the way I treat the kids. Beyond his self-esteem, we set up this toxic pattern when we do that. So to say, I'm going to counteract that narrative and take a conscious step back, as difficult as you named it, you were able to do it. So whatever that was that helped you to do it, that's that piece that other women need to hear, in particular.
Yeah, Black women. I think, and I'll say this and then I'll fall back. But when my children see their father and they interact with their father, I see them see God. And so the best gift I can give them is to fall back and allow them to see that in him and have that experience with him, and not disrupt it with my righteousness of my way, right? So, yeah.
Thank you for that, Dominic. Kareem, then Harold.
Real quick before you go, Kareem, time check. We got about 30 minutes left. So let's keep the comments brief, and I don't want to step on it at all because this is all good conversation, but I do want Sean to have a chance.
Kevin, we got 5 slides left.
Okay.
And they were supposed to go into a breakout room next to discuss what they're discussing.
Gotcha.
It's a natural flow, and I don't want to disrupt it.
Okay.
We only got 5 slides left.
Okay.
We can do it. We can do it. Kareem, then Harold.
Yeah, real quick. I just want to send acknowledgement to Sister Dominique. That was powerful statement. And then briefly, I want to touch on the idea of co-parenting, right? Because I think one of the goals for us as fatherhood providers, right, is also to create not only strong fathers, but strong co-parents, and understanding that the co-parenting and the getting the 2 parents on the same page and being able to deal with some of that past trauma or whatever that, the things that may have taken place is crucial to our mission, because that's what's going to make us better fathers. But more importantly, that's what's going to make more whole human beings, right, coming up in our communities, is people that have that input from not only the mom, not only the dad, but both the family unit, may it be untraditional, quote unquote, or traditional families. I think getting co-parents on that same, raising strong fathers, is a part of that, is making them understand the strength of co-parenting and how to navigate that sometimes tough waters. So
yeah, appreciate that, Kareem. Harold.
Thank you. I think co-parenting, regardless if both parents and family are within the same home or not, with some families, and I would go as far as to say with most families, I think that can be the most challenging thing within any family, on the adults in the family coming to agreement on how they're going to raise their children. One thing that I would just like to put out is that I'll coin a phrase that my grandparents used to use a lot. There's more than one way to skin a cat. Okay. So, my way doesn't have to be the right way or the wrong way. It's just recognizing that we have differences in terms of our parenting practices, our skills, and so forth and so on. But just to have the faith in each individual to say, look, we're relying on each other. I have enough confidence in you to know that whatever you're doing in respect to our children is the right thing. Even if we're doing it differently, it's the right thing to support our children.
Appreciate that, Harold. Awesome. So before we move to the next slide, I'm just going to mention this chart that's on the screen where it says fathers not living with the child. If you notice, this is when the Black fathers numbers get higher. And this is the symptom of what happened in the 50s. This is the symptom. This is why the numbers are higher. So people are saying, how can we be so engaged on one end, but then live out of the home on the other end and have numbers higher? Because remember in the 50s, with the advent of welfare, we were told that, and this is the residual effects make those numbers much higher. They also looked at, and I know many of you on the call, you service 5 and under, but they looked at basically school-age children, 5 to 18. We see a little bit of a shift, but we still see dads are what? Largely engaged. And then we have to take note here. Well, there's some research stuff around margins of error with the numbers here. But the other part is, as children get older, how they engage with their parents, we know it shifts. I want to be with my friends in their school program. I don't want to play with you. So we got to take that into consideration too. But we still see the Black fathers' numbers are high. Same categories, eating meals with children daily, 61% of Black dads, 64% of white dads, and 71% of Latino dads. Took children to and from activities. 27% of Black dads did that. Children 5 to 18, 19% of white dads and 22% of Latino dads. So clearly Black dads are jumping on the BART, jumping on the train, using their car, using their scooter, or their walker. They're taking their kids to and from activities. They're getting a Lyft or Uber through hook or crook. They're taking them there. Talk to children about their day. Now, when do we hear Black fathers are talking to their 15 to 18-year-old? When last time you heard that in the news? Probably not, everybody's shaking their head, they haven't. See this? See this? The false narratives that we drank the Jim Jones Kool-Aid. And then ages 5 to 18, check this out. Helping their children with homework or check that they finished their homework. Because if you, Kevin's child, Kevin's gonna come kick that butt if you don't finish that homework. 40% of Black dads outweigh white dads and Latino dads. 40% of Black dads are checking homework and making it sure that you finished it. The narrative of Black fathers is that they are present and they're engaged in the lives of their child or children. All right, Chris, and then Cap.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sean. I'll be quick too. I think I want to bring up something that Kevin has brought up in the past too, is when we're thinking about where fathers are present, I think, it's just really looking at where, reshifting our narrative a little bit. As an example, like where does that 15, 17 shows up? It really shows up in sports, Sean. So that narrative does show up where athletics and whatnot, you see a lot of dads at Saturday games, go to most basketball games in the evening, any evening right now, right? During hoop season, you see dads out there a lot. So it's really part of us as practitioners to shift where we're having some of these conversations as well. And then the other thing that comes to mind for me and just myself as I'm thinking about, curating more spaces for our fathers, for our Black fathers is, how do I explain and that's the key about practitioner work and the challenge, right? How do I explain a lot of this research without coming preaching? Because oftentimes it still starts with moms or it still starts with grandma in the household, right? And Fam Dominique, I really appreciate your perspective as well, right? Where no parent in the world would rather not have a co-parenting household, right? Because two people make a child, right? Regardless, could be two women, two men, don't matter. Two people had a child, right? That was the original intention. So to be able to craft narratives, like you say, Sean, for moms to be able to get to the dad, sometimes in my perspective, and where, again, residential communities, it's just a little bit different in that end, and really curious about how to explore the dynamics within a household to where I don't come off as judgy and also really being responsive to everybody's needs in the household. So not really a question or answer, really just a reflective point for me.
Appreciate that, Chris. Appreciate that. I thought somebody else's hand was up, but it looked like it disappeared.
Mine, Brother Sean.
Okay.
Just real quick, man, with this information, man, it's really valuable, and it makes me wonder if we, not as in we on this call, but as in like overall, if we really want to solve these issues, because we have a lot of this information that's saying that something as simple as a Black father participating in his child's life, whether it's homework or sitting at the table with him or talking to him, can dramatically, like drastically change the outcome of that young person's life. And we have information backing it up, not just opinions or how we feel. This is hardcore information that's backing this up. And I appreciate it, man, because it's just powerful, man. So I appreciate you.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Cap. All right. So Kevin, what I'm gonna do, I've done some pivoting. Oh, Harold, go ahead. Go ahead, Harold.
Thank you. I had to unmute. I'm looking at all this data. And one thing that has hit my mind is this. With all these positive outcomes that you have being depicted in your slide, the question for me is, why are we, as African Americans and people of color, in such a deficit today in respect to a lack of equity across the board? Because this proves that fathers who are in the home or out the home, and what's really interesting to me is how they are still being interactive with their child and or children. So playing devil's advocate, if that is the case, then why are so many African-American communities in such, I don't even have the word for it, but not in a better situation currently?
All right, so I'm gonna do a few things, Harold, with this. I think you asked a real question that most of us have probably asked or heard before. So I'm gonna take some responses from the group, and
Okay.
then I'll close with it. But I'll start, and then we can hear from some other people. Kevin's already unmuted. I'll start with colonization. It did what it was designed to do. It did exactly what it was designed to do. There's much more to that, but my short word answer is colonization. It achieved its goal. It is. Go ahead, Kevin.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be unmuted, but I agree with you. There's a lot of reasons. Mass incarceration, which is a result of colonization. The slide you showed earlier with welfare, there's a lot of reasons. Our systems empower moms to push dads out also. You know what I mean? When that co-parenting relationship fractures, our family court system empowers mom to kind of just push dads out. And when mom shows up to court and she sees the judge treating dad like a second-class citizen, then that empowers them. And just to acknowledge, there are a lot of hurt feelings, and sometimes we are not the best partners. So let's acknowledge the role that we play. We are not the best romantic partners and don't make the best decisions and aren't as thoughtful and as kind as we should be. But given all of those flaws, that doesn't take away our right to be a parent and I'll be a father. And so there's a lot that goes into that. That's a whole nother training, Harold. That might be a retreat, actually.
And if I may, Kevin and Sean and everyone, the reason why I asked this question is that I'm only left to assume that there are many within multiple communities that will be looking at this data as we're presenting it to them to cause social and justice change, to pose that argument. Well, how can this data be accurate? But when the reality is, look at these different communities where African-American people and people of color are living, it doesn't wash. So the response that we're getting from the group is very appropriate, and I'm in full agreement with it. It is based upon colonization and racial injustices and institutionalized racism. So I'm just trying to make sure that we're all on the same page, because I can only imagine, as Otis was saying, this will be something that he feels, and I strongly agree, to put on his social database network. So if we're out here sharing this information, then what language and examples will we be using to inform people who are looking at this data? Yes, this data states this, and then how do we counteract that argument?
Well, so here's the piece around the argument that you said you were playing the devil's advocate. So the first piece is when the people say, well, this data can't be right because look how Black people are living.
Right.
That narrative and that thinking is a white dominant frame, Harold. And it's important that we name it and call it out. That when the immediate response is that, even as another Black person, if that's my response, then I need to take 3 steps back to be reflective that that thinking comes from somewhere. Then if we look at who has the espoused power in this country, the espoused power has largely been one group of people.
Mm-hmm.
As that slowly began to change, guess what began to change? The research around who was doing the fatherhood pieces.
Mm-hmm.
So they were able to ask different research questions, go into the research differently. So therefore, what came out of it? Different answers. I think our greatest problem, this is my personal opinion, Harold, our greatest problem is segregation. Because our ancestors, before the segregation of schools, they had raggedy ass books, no books, but they still taught Black children well. And it was when we said move out of that construct that we begin to lose the essence of that which was African displaced in this country, that was still passed on in all these subtle ways of how we still exist, of how it shows up in everything we still do. Like most people don't realize that baby mama is Jamaican talk. Most people don't realize that this isn't an offensive. It's this talk that gets passed on, that gets washed when we have never been afforded the opportunity to care and educate our own. and I don't mean this from a racist lens, because that's what people will hear. Kevin and I were having this conversation earlier. What I said isn't what you heard. So let me be really clear with my language. When given the opportunity, someone would just put freedom schools, which is what Lincoln does, to educate my own, then I am in charge of what those Black children experience, what they're afforded, what they learn, and what they don't learn. And we know that that actually has a great change effect on the identity development, when my teacher not is just here to educate me, but my teacher cares about me also, and my teacher's connected to who I am. That is a huge part of why we still struggle, because when that got ripped out, everything began to shift and change. Not only did teachers lose their jobs, Black teachers, I'm talking about Black teachers, but how we begin to kind of actualize as communities across this country fundamentally begin to change. And if you look at any research, you're going to see that that was fundamentally when we were beginning to make small steps up as a racialized group of people in this country who were enslaved and brought to this country against our will. So our entrance into this country is different than everybody else's. It is, and most people don't like to acknowledge that, but then told that we were not human. So based on race, which is why the true narrative of Black fatherhood has to be spotlighted, because these are all the pieces that if we don't interrogate them, they remain unchallenged, unchecked, and unchanged. So we go about our business as usual. But if we take a step back and realize, how did we get here? Because that's the part of this, understanding that we didn't just wake up and get here. There's been systems that push this forward. So becoming aware of that demands that we do something different by saying, whatever my position is, I can do what? Something different from any position to change this narrative of Black fatherhood, which ultimately affects what? The outcomes for their Black child or Black children.
And last but not least, and I know I'm probably exhausting a lot of time, but I feel this is so important based upon the data that we have here. That's the piece that I feel is missing if I'm taking some of this and trying to present it in another group, a very diverse group. Because I'm only left to assume there's going to be individuals in the audience who's going to look at this data and possibly pose this question. So I'm just trying to ensure that we have the knowledge behind it, the understanding, the skill set, and in some cases, even the confidence to call it out as what it is. This comes from slavery. It is designed by this institutionalized government here in the United States, who has been perpetrating it from the beginning, since we come here, even the current, and is planning to go into the future. So how do we combat these kind of things? And the biggest thing is destroying this false narrative about African-American men and men of color. And we can prove, even with the challenges of being out of the household, we still come through. We still come through. And in fact, even outrate other ethnic and racial groups and how we connect with our family, our children. We still come through.
Right. So Harold, I want Otis to go. I just got one response to that powerful thing you just said. When you talked about people seeing this data and wanting to give it to different audiences, I just want to encourage people to be okay. And again, this is the opposite of white dominant thinking that we all have swam in. That be okay with stumbling and be okay with messing up. Because when we think we have to show up and it has to be perfect, then we end up moving away from it. Be okay with having what I call an awkward or a clumsy conversation. Be okay with saying, you know, this is my first time talking about this outside of reading about it. Like it's important that we all guide ourselves through those steps as we have the awkward or clumsy conversation about this stuff with people who might not challenge, and then people who might challenge, to be okay with that happening in the forefront and be okay with saying, okay, next time I'm going to do it differently. Because if we don't, it's going to keep us hostage from wanting to engage in it at all. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to comment on the fact that what Brother Harold mentioned. We have to know what our history is, and our history has been stolen, is hidden. I thank God that I was able to grow up in the late '60s before integration came through, when we were segregated and we had our own Black communities. We were self-sufficient. We had our own Black doctors. I mean, I remember when my friends used to get chased from going to San Leandro Boys Club. I remember when they was burning crosses in San Leandro. And so if you look at places like Tulsa, where our people had their own community and they were bombed and they were murdered and they were killed, the ancestors, the elders, they wanted to forget that. They swept it under the rug. They didn't pass on the history because of the shame or the fear. I don't know exactly what it was. I've seen documentaries about it. But one thing for us as Black folk, we have to know our true history. And when I post this, whether or not people believe it or not, if I can get one person to gravitate to it, I've done my job. I know I'll never get the masses, but if I can get one or two people to say, you know what, this is real. This builds my self-esteem. I've done my job.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Otis. Wow. Powerful conversation. Powerful, powerful, powerful. So I'll just do these 2 more slides, Kev, because we're not going to push them into the breakout rooms. We just had an open breakout room here, which is, I think, the beauty of having a smaller group. I think it becomes easier for folk to unmute and share, which I really love, to bring those voices in. But the final 2 slides are really, how do we connect with Black fathers? How do we connect with Black fathers? So kind of what I said earlier around the way we asked that question when Maria posed that question, and I said, that's an asset-informed way that we approach. We've got to believe that fathers are knowledgeable and capable. Dominique said, it was hard, bro. It was hard, but I took that step back and I did it. I didn't want to, but it was hard. That step back says to him, you're knowledgeable and capable. Go ahead, like do what you're gonna do. That's an asset-informed approach. Even when you think, I don't know, it might not happen, that's your worry, not his. That this is how we connect with fathers. We've got to think about this notion of not ideal, because remember that ideal is what a dominant white structure thinking, but what's possible? What is possible? You know what's possible? I'm gonna go fill out 2 job applications today. The ideal, get a job today. That might not happen, but I can fill out 2 job applications today. Not 20, but 2. You all know what that means. Here's this other big piece. Think about what this Black father's vision is. Not what the goal is, not a goal plan, but his vision. And then just listen. Goals are compliance driven. We all know it instinctively. At all of our jobs, if your supervisor comes and says, let's create some goals for your work together, all of us think in our head, damn. You know why you think that? Because it's compliance driven. You're going to be evaluated in some way on those goals. But if your boss sat down with you and said, Kevin, tell me your vision for the Father's Corps for the next 3, 5, 7, and 10 years. That's real different than your boss saying, Kevin, I want you to create some goals for the next 14 months. Kevin gonna start sweating. He's gonna call Dara. He's gonna be texting me. It's going to be a ripple effect. The difference between asking a Black father about a goal and the vision. Our conversations with dad should be vision driven. Sometimes they won't make sense. I got a 20-year-old cousin who comes over here often. He helps me do stuff. It's just really my way of giving him some extra money because he broke, because everything he does, I can do myself. And I kind of tell him that. I tell him that, like, look, bro, I love you. Your mama, my first cousin, she like my sister, but he's 21. So I often say, what's your vision? And he has these grand visions. The one time I asked him about a goal, I didn't get a response. But when I asked him about what's his visions, he has a lot of stuff that he wants to do. I think he's capable of it. That's the difference between visioning and goal driven. Now, the issue is making the vision happen, breaking that down and saying, how do you move towards that? The other thing around us connecting with dads is it already exists. So what we don't want to do is try to create what Lonnie's program already has. What we don't want to do is try to create what Hector's program already has. What we don't want to do is try to recreate what Otis is already doing with dads, what Harold is already doing with dads. And so often we do that because we're not connected. because we're not networking the correct way. And then the fifth one here is we do involve mothers and grandmothers. I should have highlighted that word, when appropriate. So for some of us, those are the first people we run to. Let me just go ask the mother. Let me go ask the wife. Let me ask the girlfriend. Ask him. When appropriate, we can involve them. But when we're talking about Black fathers, we want to move forward without that being the go-to, because that's been the traditional way. Then I want to encourage us when we connect with fathers to think beyond what we have here. And Chris unmuted and shared some of this. So we know that barbershops and gyms and places of worship and, you know, coaches tend to hang out at middle school, high school, college, sports events, and job training programs. But what are the places where we can meaningfully connect with fathers outside of these places? What are the meaningful places that we can connect with them around the true narrative of Black fatherhood, to get them to talk about their visions, to talk about their expectations for parenting, to talk about, you know, their small wins, what they're doing differently. That could be so simple as, you know, I put my baby's diaper on Thursday and it stayed on right. The other times it kept falling off. Whatever it is, it may sound silly to us, but that small win is the encouragement that they need us to mirror back to them, that that small win is the true narrative for you as a Black father. So I appreciated this rich conversation today, despite us not going into any breakout spaces. I think this was even better. I think we had a breakout space here amongst ourselves. I encourage you all to check out the video, the recording. It's not a video, the recording, because they recorded this. Kev, this goes up on the Father's Core's webpage, right?
Yep, and Virve will send a link to the web, to the video. She'll send a slide deck. That'll probably get out early next week. So yeah, you'll have access to all of that. Sean, are you done? I just wanted to make sure you were finished wrapping up.
I'm done, Kev. Thank you all so much. I appreciated everybody's voice. Otis, Cap, Diana, Dominique, Kevin, Lonnie, Dara, Maria, Harold, Lisa, Hector, Chris, and Brian and Lori. Thank you all for unmuting and sharing and bringing your faces and your voice to this space. I so appreciate you all. Kevin?
Absolutely. Thanks, Sean. Once again, Sean always knocks it out the park. I just want to just reiterate why this highlighting the true narrative work is important. What if we actually thought about dads in the ways that those slides depicted dads, as far as their engagement, Black fathers and their engagement? You know, what would our services look like if that's how we thought dads were engaged? What would our budgets look like? You know, everybody talks about, you know, we do a lot of work. I do some consulting work. They talk about they need money. They need money to do this fatherhood work. Well, most organizations have family engagement and family support dollars. So you do have money to serve families, and fathers are a part of families. You have parent engagement, parent support dollars. So you do have money. It's just a matter of what is important to you, what is important to your organization, to find, to carve out a piece of those family engagement and parent engagement dollars to ensure that fathers are being served and supported by your organization. So, you know, the way we think about fathers, particularly Black fathers, it is reflected in our staff, what our staff looks like. It's reflected in our budgets, and it's reflected in our actions. So this work is critical, because if we don't think about dads, particularly Black dads, in a positive light, we're going to continue to not serve them. And so this work is about, you know, highlighting that true narrative so we can start serving and engaging fathers in the way that they deserve to be served and engaged. So thank you, Sean. Thanks for everybody for your engagement and participation in today's training. I think this was, we got enough for part 2 of this. I appreciate the conversation. Please take a few minutes to complete the survey. Virve has put the survey link in the chat. We have not been getting a good response to our survey, so it is not, we haven't been getting any responses, good or bad. So if you could please take a few minutes to complete the survey. And other than that, you guys have a great weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you again.
Appreciations, y'all.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chris. Lamont, great to see you, brother.
Thank you so much, Sean, and everyone.
Thanks, Harold.
And good seeing you, my brother Lonnie.
Now, where is Lonnie? I feel like he's been part of this back in the day. Is he just re-engaging?
Lonnie was a former Head Start grandparent.
Oh, really?
At my
Lonnie don't
site.
look like he old enough to have kids, period.
And honestly, I never knew he was involved. My mistake. Never knew he was involved in father figure stuff, father involvement.
He looked familiar. I'm not sure if he's been involved.